Hello and we welcome you all into another edition of the Penn's Iceberg radio program. It's Tuesday, October 25th, and the atmosphere is ripe for hockey as the Penguins have just finished their first game in a back-to-back two-game series with a division rival, New York Islanders. I'm your host, Casey Stamp. Along with me tonight is Luke Courtwright. How's it going, Luke?
It's going great. How about you?
Going fantastic. Always easier to do this after a win. That's excellent to hear. And also with us, the newest member of the Iceberg panel, we welcome in Jason Kaczynski. So glad you could join us. Jason, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and it's always nice to get 2 points on the road.
Awesome to have you here as well. Well, we're certainly glad to have you all in here tonight, and we've got a full slate of topics to discuss this evening. Our third show of the year, we're going to start off, as always, with game analysis. We're going to talk about Jordan Staal and his expectations for the year and for the future. We're going to give you all the latest on the Pens injury updates, and we'll top it all off with some game predictions. So stay tuned. We've got a great show for you all here tonight. Don't want to miss a thing. We'll be right back on the Pens Iceberg. Well, Evgeny Malkin back in the lineup tonight for the first of a two-game series, back-to-back against the Islanders. This game taking place at Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Long Island. Early on, Malkin and the Islander star, John Tavares, both looking sharp, but a bit of back-to-back, back-and-forth plays. Late in the period, it would be Pascal Dupuis on a breakaway goal in transition to give the Penguins the 1-0 lead. Luke, take us through that goal, and how did the Penguins forwards, how are they able to catch the Islanders defensemen so off guard?
Well, with this particular play, Brooks Orpik can catch people off guard sometimes. We always think of him as this physical, wear-you-down guy, but he's a great skater with a good first pass. The Islanders got older this offseason, and with this being their first meeting of the year, I'm not sure that it was easy for them to adjust.
I would have to agree. I think the Islanders were obviously trying to get their D a little bit more involved with the play rather than just have three guys cycle down low and have no options. But the defense just got caught watching the paint dry a little bit and were not able to get back into the defensive zone.
Absolutely. And a fantastic play by Pascal Dupuis. He's done really well on breakaways so far this season. He had that shorthanded goal in the game against, I believe it was the Minnesota Wild. And obviously the transition game, always a key factor for the Pens. Jason, how did it look to you tonight in this game?
A little out of sync in the first period. I don't know if it was just being on the road or not being in friendly confines of the Consol Energy Center or what it was, but as a group, the Pens just didn't look that fresh, but they got it out of their system pretty quickly. The transition game looks a lot better with number 71 out there, that's for sure. He was dominant in all three zones tonight, and while he didn't get a point, definitely helped give the Pens some extra chances tonight.
Absolutely, and no more scoring in the first. On to the second we go. Immediately at the start of the second period, it was Richard Park, who's just played extremely well, especially when you're talking about the face-off circle. He would score and give the Pens the 2-0 lead. Sloppy play by the New York Islanders, especially in the neutral zone. They couldn't even seem to get the puck into the Pens zone cleanly. Of course, Penguins known for defensive pressure, and surely they applied some tonight. Penguins over the last few games, despite all the injuries, have still been able to dominate in puck possession. Jason, how are they doing it?
They look pretty good. They're doing it, fairly well. They're not taking a lot of penalties, which is, keeping the puck out of their own zone, and they're winning their defensive face-offs in their own zone and getting the puck up the neutral zone. They're keeping it pretty simple and going north to south as quickly as possible.
Exactly. They're really sticking to their game out there. Players aren't really being put into roles that they're not meant to play. There's no real need for panic, I guess. We all know this is a smart team. They can skate, and because of that, they'll always be able to compete.
No more scoring in the second, which takes us to the third at 3:47 of the third period. Marty Reisner would be assessed the 4-minute double minor for high sticking. Of course, that was on Jordan Staal. We got to see the cut on the bridge of his nose. But the Penguins couldn't convert on the 4-minute power play. Late in the period, Islanders would pull their goaltender, and it was Jordan Staal for his 6th of the year. He's off to an absolutely fantastic start, and we'll talk More about him in the next segment. But the final score of the game would be a 3-0 Pittsburgh victory, and Marc-Andre Fleury finally gets that much-deserved shutout both of the last two games. It's been a last-minute goal, and he finally gets his prize, seeing the donut on the scoreboard. And Luke, we talked a few weeks ago about his chances for the Vezina, and he's really starting to look sharp here early. Or are you surprised that he's come out this strong, considering how slow he started last year?
Not really. I think he knew the situation. He obviously had that terrible start last year, almost having to battle Brenton Johnson for playing time. And with the injuries coming into this season, he just needed to get into gear before training camp hit, and I think he responded nicely.
I concur. His confidence is really setting the tone for this team right now. After the horrible start last season, he still rebounded to have what I think is the best season of his career so far, and he's stepping up to the plate right now without Sid and Malkin just coming back now, so he's one of the leaders on this team.
Goaltender's always the best penalty killer, and he's going to be extremely important for the Pittsburgh Penguins going forward. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we're going to talk about Jordan Staal and the great start he's off to. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's talk about one of the most controversial topics that Pens fans can't help but to debate about Jordan Staal. So much buzz surrounding a guy who plays a big role in the Penguins' offense, especially in the absence of Sidney Crosby, and a little bit this year in the absence of Evgeny Malkin. Had a great game Saturday night against the Devils, and once again tonight against the Islanders. Stahl's still very young, 23 years old. He wasn't even old enough to drink the champagne from the Stanley Cup back in 2009 when the Penguins celebrated their win over the Red Wings in Detroit. And, of course, the debate about his role and his production has raged on for some time now. And, of course, the situation is magnified by the absence of the Penn star players. Jason, we'll let you go first. What exactly is the expectation of Jordan Staal? What roughly do you think are his goals as far as offensive production?
I think the expectations for Staal are different from the fans versus the organization and the other players on this team. I think the fans have a lot of expectations because, as number 2 overall pick, we're used to getting, Crosby and Malkin-like production out of those guys, and Stahl's he's a different player. I think what's reasonable for him is to continue to do what he's done so far, and that's just be solid in all zones. His goal is to shut down the opponent's top lines and be great defensively and win key draws while continuing to improve his offensive game. I've heard a lot of different comparisons to him over the last couple of years, and two of the ones that I think are pretty spot on would be Guy Carbonneau and Keith Primo. And both of those guys are, top-notch defensive centers. Guy Carbonneau's a 3-time Stanley Cup winner. Those are pretty good comparisons, I think. I mean, his ceiling is probably about a 60-point scorer if you want to put numbers on it, 30 goals, 30 assists in any given year. And what he does doesn't show up on the score sheet all the time. I think those are pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Between 50 and 60 points year in, year out, 25 to 30 goals. He's really not the type of guy you want to attach numbers to because that's not really the focus of his game anyway. But hopefully he can stay healthy this year, knock on wood with the Pens luck. And we can see some personal bests out of him.
Absolutely. And do you think, Luke, that all the injuries to the key players, such as Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, obviously in the lineup tonight, but he's already missed significant time in the season and last year, have put Staal under the microscope of the coaching staff and management to any degree? And if so, how much?
Well, they'll keep it in mind for management for contract negotiations, I'm sure. But realistically, I think it's just something the media likes to play up, to have stories to go on, whatnot. With those guys out, Staal, he's going to get more minutes, but his role on the team really isn't any different. He's still playing with the same types of players, if not the same exact players. Obviously, Tyler Kennedy out right now. He'll get some power play time, but he's not going to go out there and try and mimic what a Crosby or Malkin would do. And Dan Bylsma's been very consistent with his systems. He's sticking to his guns, and it's been paying off.
Definitely. I don't think Stahl's under any more pressure than he normally would be, and when you have key parts of your team like Sid and Gino out for long periods of time, it forces the entire team, not just one player, to step up their game and chip in offensively and defensively and just different areas of the game. But at the end of the day, he's still required to go out and do the same things that he's done since he was a rookie. And it's kind of nice for the coaching staff, I'm sure, to be able to throw him out in every game situation possible and know what you're going to get.
Absolutely. And talking about just how he fits into our system, obviously the Penguins system relies heavily on three key points when you're talking about defense, penalty killing, and strength up the middle. With a healthy Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, should fans expect any more or any less of Jordan Staal than they do when these types of injuries occur?
I think anytime you have injuries to key players, the competitive nature of the guys is they want to prove their worth and look to step up in some way. And as we said, Luke, not all Stahl's efforts every night show up on the score sheet, whether it be touch or the goals or assists. He does a lot of stuff in the defensive zone and winning just key draws. He's a very steady player, but still developing offensively. I like what he added so far this year. He has a nice little spin move on the boards in the offensive zone, and he's going to improve year after year. He's adding to his game, and I don't think we expect him to be Sid or Malkin. He'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, statistics-wise, he should get more playing time, which in theory would give him more points. But I really don't think much about his style of game anyway would change. The production's obviously been there early. I'm more pleased with his production in the face-off circle than anything, because that's been a huge weakness in his game since as long as I can remember.
Absolutely. Luke, trying to take us inside the mind of a gritty defensive player like Jordan Staal. He obviously prides himself on his work ethic and defensive abilities, but how much do you think a guy like Jordan Staal thinks about producing offensively? Do you think that's an objective for him every game, or is offensive production more of a bonus for a guy like Jordan Staal?
We seem to talk about this every week, but the Pens really feed off their transition game, and Stahl's right in the middle of that. He can make a lot happen with his reach, and I think he's learning that now more than ever. We saw the backhand goal a few games ago, where you couldn't get the puck off him because, as Bob Berry would say, he's a big pterodactyl out there. Fans rag on him sometimes, which I don't think is really fair to him. Having a guy like Jonathan Toews being selected right after him, I think, puts a little bit of a stigma on it, but I don't know if I would even go there. No other team is getting this kind of production out of their third-line center. Bonus isn't really a word I would use as far as production, because he's a talented hockey player. Definitely.
I think Jordan Staal really proves his worth, come spring and in the playoff time, and we've seen that in the run to the finals for 2 years, and last year when we were without two of our top centers, really. If you go back to his junior hockey days, he played 2 years in Peterborough, and he was pretty much required to do the same thing that he's doing now for the Penguins. He wasn't the number one center on his team. His role is to chip in when he can, but work on his defensive game and grow into his body and be a force the way he knows how. I think he feeds off a lot of those areas of his game, and some nights when he has a tough night in the circle or on the PK, that can be reflected offensively. But I think the reverse is also true. When he has a good penalty kill or he wins those draws, it gives him that much more confidence to go ahead and swoop in the lane and put the puck behind the goalie's head on the backhand.
And Jordan Staal's performance is so highly magnified that even things like his stick come into question. If you've ever taken a closer look at the stick that Jordan Staal uses, his blade is almost completely flat. No curvature in the blade for those top shelf wristers. Jason, do you think an equipment change, something as simple as that, adding some curvature to his blade, could help him be a bigger offensive producer?
One thing I know is that hockey players are definitely creatures of habit. A lot of them find a routine earlier on in their junior careers and pros and stick with it pretty much the whole way through. Either they wear a visor or they don't. Their pads, their gloves, the stick curve. Although a couple of years ago we did see Sidney Crosby switch from a flat blade to a somewhat curve. It seemed to help him, but Jordan Staal isn't your prototypical sniper. He's not going to score 50 or 60 goals. It might be interesting to see what he could do if he had more power play time and have a experiment with a power play stick or something in the off season. But it could be something fun to play around with.
Yeah, there's that idea of evolve or die, and between equipment changes, rule changes, new systems being developed all the time. I think you always want to make sure you're moving forward, but the way Jordan Staal plays, like you said, he's not going to be a sniper and suddenly be filling the net every other game. Something with curvature could actually hurt his game. He makes a lot of 5-foot passes, exiting the zone, a lot of backhand shots around the net. He chips to speed quite often. He's not Jonathan Toews. He's not Nicholas Backstrom. His style of game isn't really patterned towards that, and I think people compare him too much just because of his draft position and draft class. So let's move past that.
Absolutely, and obviously Jordan Staal, coming from the prestigious hockey family, his brothers Mark and Eric also in the NHL. Mark playing as a defenseman for the New York Rangers. Eric Staal, team captain, one of the NHL's highest paid players, plays for the Carolina Hurricanes, actually had his own all-star team last year. And when you look closely at the Staal family, every one of the players has such a unique and diverse skill set. Mark obviously likes to play the physical, gritty defenseman. Eric, one of the NHL's premier offensive centermen, and with Jordan, his grit and his penalty-killing talents. I guess my question is, how do three brothers growing up in the same household, playing largely together through most of their lives, develop such different skill sets? Do you think that these different types of games are developed early as children, or perhaps junior hockey through coaching? Luke, how do you think that these three brothers could have such different skill sets?
It makes perfect sense in my mind. Eric's the oldest. When you're a kid anyway, the main thing you want to do is go score goals. Defense really isn't the first thing on your mind. Then Mark is the second oldest. He's the only defenseman out of the four brothers. And then you have Jordan, who would be the opposing center to Eric. So in that sense, it kind of makes sense to me. But then as they evolved, Eric coming through junior was rail thin compared to Jordan, who's got a couple inches on him. To this point, bigger, stronger. Incredibly different games. I think that their style was developed early, but there's definitely that maturation process factored in later on.
I definitely think there is something to having a hockey pedigree, and that certainly doesn't hurt. But there's a lot attributed to coaching, particularly maybe in junior hockey. I'm sure there were some interesting battles on the Trot Farm growing up. Eric and Jared versus Mark and Jordan, and I wonder if there's one more Staal brother floating around out there that's a goalie that could just be really strong down the middle there for the Staal family.
Absolutely. They should form their own hockey team. They could be pretty competitive with most of the NHL, I think, with all the talent in that family. And some call the Staal family the best set of brothers in the NHL. Of course, you might know a pair of Swedish twins up in Vancouver who might dispute that claim. Jason, what's your opinion of the Staals? Do you think they're the league's strongest hockey family?
I put them at the top right now. They're definitely some competition. The Sedins are close behind. The Sedins both have a Hart and Art Ross trophy each, but Eric and Jordan, they have the Stanley Cup's ring in their ears, so their trophies are a little bit better. The Shin brothers also are probably going to move up pretty fast to be in that conversation pretty soon. I
would agree with that. I like the Sedins, but there's 3 stalls in the NHL now, and I would say they're all all-star caliber. You look through the years, I think there's a lot more competition there between, the Sutters, the Richards, the Espositos, the Mahavliches. But right now, I've got to give it up to the stalls.
Absolutely. And the Shen brothers, you heard Jason reference Luke playing in Toronto, Braden now in Philadelphia after that trade earlier in the offseason with the Los Angeles Kings. And certainly a fun topic of discussion, and I'm sure the debate will rage on as pertaining to Jordan Staal. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to give you the latest injury updates, and we're going to finish it off with game analysis. Stay tuned right here on the Pens Iceberg. Welcome back. I think we can all agree here that the last thing Pens needed are more injuries to key players. In any case, Zbynek McCulloch will be out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken finger. Following a blocked shot in the Penguins-Devils game, he blocked 6 shots in that game on Saturday night. Again, expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. He's been line mates with Paul Martin since they were signed in 2010. Here's what Paul Martin had to say.
Z going down, having to play without him for a little bit. Are you guys going to adapt? I know you guys have dealt with a lot of injuries and such, but yourself in particular, he's your line, D partner and stuff.
Yeah, you hate to see anything like that. Hopefully he's not out for a long period of time. But at the same time, it's part of the game, and we have some other good defensemen back there that'll step in and do a good job. So, and like you said, we've been dealing with a lot of injuries, on and off, and so whoever's in there has to do the job, and I'm sure that'll happen now.
You guys have been together pretty much during the time you guys were signed here. Does that make it tougher for you? I mean, you guys penalty killing and really online down the line. I imagine you guys got used to it.
Yeah, I think you develop a certain level of comfort when you spend that much time paired with a certain guy, and you start to realize where they're going to be and what you're going to do. But I think the way that we play is it's definitely okay to be playing with other guys. And me personally, it doesn't matter who I play with. A good group of guys back here, and they all can play. So. It's tough when, I think it's nice to have a healthy team, and, I think hopefully sometime during this year we get one, but the guys have been doing a good job handling the injuries, and guys have stepped up and filled in and done a good job, so I guess it'd be nice to get everyone back.
Well, better to get these injuries out of the way early in the season rather than late.
Yeah, as long as we're winning, it's tough to, when you don't have some of your key guys in, the way it is. And, last year we were missing a couple guys, and we still found a way to, win some games down the stretch. So it's tough, but you got to move on and trying to find a way to win.
And we just heard what Paul Martin had to say there. Ben Lovejoy expected to take the place of Zbynek McCulloch for the next few weeks. Jason, what do you expect from Ben Lovejoy in his new role, filling in for a defenseman like Zbynek McCulloch, especially trying to fill that crucial role he plays in the penalty kill?
I think the PK unit as a whole is pretty smart, and they're not going to put too much on Ben that he can't handle. One of the things I saw in a recent game was, I think the Montreal game was on the PK Fleury sort of directing traffic and tapping, tang with the stick and kind of, saying the shooter's out here and where to be, and it's kind of nice to see. And I think they just have to take a by committee approach. Lovejoy and England were both solid penalty killers in the AHL, and until they can ease Brooke Orpik back into regular minutes, I think they'll just have to make do.
Exactly. This really isn't going to be a straight swap by any means. Ben Lovejoy, not exactly the same type of player as Zbynek McCulloch. And honestly, McCulloch didn't have the greatest of starts of this season, looking more like a fish out of water than an unconventional defensive player, let's say. Was starting to pick it up there towards the end of the run, so it's unfortunate that he was injured. But Lovejoy, he seems to have a bit of a comfort zone problem right now. I think he realized that players were coming back from injury, Brooks Orpik especially, and he felt Matt Niskanen rising a little bit, and his roster spot might be in jeopardy. So I think if you just calm him down a little bit, he'll be fine. But once again, it's not going to be just Ben Lovejoy picking up here.
And one of the things Ben Lovejoy is noted for, loves to take that point shot. He's got a wicked slap shot. If he can tame that a little bit, I'm sure he could start hitting the back of the net quite frequently. He's more like a winger, back playing defenseman with the way he produces offensively. Obviously, the numbers aren't there for a winger, but, the way that he shoots and likes to play. Let's hear a little bit of what the Reverend, as some like to call him, Ben Lovejoy, had to say.
Shot from the point, how can you collectively get together as a unit and replace that?
Well, he plays a lot of minutes. Obviously, everybody's going to have to absorb a few more. He's been an important part of our blue line and our team for a while, and we will certainly miss him.
Does that responsibility largely fall to you, do you think, for this next game against New York?
I hope so. I think it'll fall on everyone, but I hope to raise the level of my game and fill in a bit. Nobody can do what he does. He blocked 6 shots last game. It's pretty impressive, and I will hopefully absorb some minutes and help.
Your PK has obviously been so good again this year. How much of a component is Mahalik for that?
He is. He's a huge piece, but all the defensemen and forwards are, and our goaltenders are the biggest part of that. They've been great all year, but they've been especially impressive on the penalty kill. We've given up 1 penalty kill goal. We take pride in that as a team and as a penalty killing unit, and it's something that we want to continue, even without Z back there.
And well, as you heard him say, no one can fully replace McCulloch, but Lovejoy will certainly try to do his best to fill in over the course of the next month or so. Other injury updates: Malkin was back in the lineup for tonight's game. Kennedy's still out with concussion symptoms, and Crosby's still inching closer to a return by the day as he continues to practice. All right, folks, and with that, let's move into game prediction. Friday night, the Pens will once again square off with the New York Islanders. This time, it'll be at home in the Consol Energy Center. What do you expect in the second game of the Pens Islanders, Luke?
Well, I think the Islanders are going to come out hard, knowing how they played in the game this evening. They looked pretty sluggish out there, but then again, Marc-Andre Fleury did play an extremely solid game. So I think they need to work on just their defenseman gap control and just getting their transition game going. They've got a lot of speedy forwards, so the quicker they can get the puck north-south, the better off they'll be. I would expect another Penguins win. Let's say 3-1 Penguins this time, because I do think the Islanders will score a goal, because I can't see them being shut out twice in a row.
I think we're going to be in for a little bit more of the same, what we saw tonight. Both teams are over last year's melee. This isn't last year where the Islanders were out of it early and really didn't have anything to play for. There's 2 divisional points on the table for the taking. I think the key for the Penguins is going to be getting the first goal and putting the pressure on the Islanders on the road and letting them play from behind.
Absolutely.
I'll take the Pens with the 4-2 win.
And there you have it. And obviously those division wins, so important, especially when you're talking about early in the season, trying to get division wins and lead the division. Obviously, the Penguins still leading the division over the Philadelphia Flyers. Saturday night, the Penguins will take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the red-hot Phil Kessel, obviously leading the NHL in goals scored. No word as of yet who will start in goal for Toronto, but all indications point to James Reimer's return. He missed a game after whiplash syndrome against the Montreal Canadiens. Brian Giunta made a little bit of goalie contact, and then we saw Reimer leave that game with whiplash symptoms, expected to be back for the Penguins game. Jason, we'll start with you this time. Can the Penguins capitalize on what is right now a struggling Toronto defense?
I think they can, just like they did last week against Montreal. If you can get pucks behind their D, they're already a little bit banged up, and bringing guys up from the minors, and everyone's losing bodies these days, so we're all in the same boat. I think if they can do that, and if Reimer and Gustafsson don't get a lot of help, it could be a long night for Toronto.
I would agree with that. I feel like the Penguins match up really strongly against Toronto. Pittsburgh with a lot of the smaller, kind of feistier, almost darty forwards. The Toronto defense, a lot of kind of big lumbering guys. Mike Komisarek immediately jumping to mind. If they can get pucks deep in and win some battles in the corners, I think it'll be a pretty easy win for Pittsburgh.
And there you have it. You heard it here first. If all goes as planned, Penguins will be on a 6-game winning streak. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We thank you all so much for tuning in tonight and joining us here. Luke, Jason, thanks so much as always for joining us here tonight, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks again. Let's go, Pens.
And for all of us here at the Pens Iceberg radio program, we bid you a good evening. Until next time, I'm your host, Casey Stamp, saying so long from the Pens Iceberg.